Welcome to the Operations Science Podcast, where the art and science of operational excellence come to life through captivating stories of triumph, challenge, and transformation from the front lines of industry. Our distinguished guests, from manufacturing pioneers and medical device innovators to aerospace visionaries, diagnostic lab leaders, and major capital project leaders, unveil the hidden patterns and powerful insights that drive exceptional results in the complex world of operations. Join us on this journey of discovery as we explore the brilliant minds behind the systems that make our world work and uncover the leadership secrets that could revolutionize your approach to operations forever. Here is your host, Ed Pound.
Our guest today joins us from Bordeaux, France, where he spends his time thinking about how entire health systems, factories, and global supply chains can flow better from the first customer inquiry all the way to a sterilized surgical tray arriving in an operating room. He's worked in fast-moving consumer goods, making chocolate for iconic brands. He's worked in complex medical environments, supporting surgical and sterilization products. And now he spans both manufacturing and the business side, helping organizations transform the way they think about tenders or requests for proposals, regulatory pathways, factory capacity, and distribution networks. What makes his story stand out is the evolution of his continuous improvement journey. He started in classic lean projects, produced more with the same people, and today leads broad business transformation, standardizing tender processes across countries, designing hospital workflows, doubling the capacity of new factories, and rethinking how distribution centers feed global demand. Along the way, he's done it in multiple languages and cultures, from Mexico to the US to France and across Europe. His is a story about using structured thinking and scientific discipline, not just on the factory floor, but in commercial, regulatory, and strategic decisions that ultimately affect patients and customers worldwide. Please welcome to the Operations Science Podcast, Oscar Sroor. Hello, Oscar. How are you today?
Hi, Edward. How are you? Doing well, thank you.
Good. Well, thanks for being on the podcast. Let's jump into it. You've worked across both manufacturing operations and business side transformation, from factories to distribution centers, and even sort of the back office or support roles of tenders and regulatory pathways. How do you describe what you do today when someone asks about your role? That's a pretty broad portfolio.
Yeah, that's always a tricky question that I have no problem explaining. I try to go from what I know is I do like process engineering, but also like consultancy, internal consultancy. I consider myself like a continuous learner, because everywhere I go, I don't have all the answers, but try to learn from the people. So I'm a learner. Sometimes we're like psychologists, listening to the people, their problems, collaborator. So I tell people, I will collaborate with you. I will understand your process, help you understand your process, because sometimes we're so focused on something. But as my wife tells me, like, Oscar, I never know how to explain what you do to my friends or to my family. I try to tell her.
I run into a little bit of the same issue when people ask, what's operation science, if they haven't worked in operations. It's like, I get a blank stare sometimes. I just say, it's about being more efficient and more effective.
Yeah.
Just keep it simple. In many organizations, business teams used to say, and still say, lean is for the factory. How do you help people in functions like sales, marketing, and regulatory, purchasing, negotiations, back office, see that these principles apply to their work as well?
Well, in our company, when I started working here in this company, actually, we started changing the name of the organization. We were the lean organization. Then we moved it to business transformation. So trying to explain people that it's not only about machines and process and layouts and flows. It also, for me, like a process, it's any process. I've been in many industries, a marketing process, a tender processing, a sales process. It has standards, it has steps to follow up. So that's how we started like working with the people and explain like how to flip that question, moving it from the lean to actually business processes. And it's been working so far.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of, that follows the path of operation science. You know, when we first started out, it originated from factory physics. And you'd go into a hospital and you'd say, we want to make your emergency department more efficient, more effective, get people through more quickly. We've got these natural laws that apply everywhere. And they'd say, that's factory physics. We're not a factory. It doesn't apply here. And so it's kind of very interesting, just the labels that you use, how it sets up people's expectations. But that's a great point. I mean, you're not talking about factory processes. You're just talking about business transformation. So, I've had similar experience. So you mentioned that early in your career, you're pretty much focused on project delivery and savings, like producing more with the same people in 30 weeks. Has that changed as you've gone broader and focused on business transformation? Or what are the goals similar? Or are you looking for bottom line results? What's changed, if anything?
Yeah, we've changed in this organization into more than project based. We do a lot of Kaizens. We still have like results to deliver based on the Kaizen, but we do a lot of the cultural part. So we want to make sure people understand the concept. It's not just like, okay, let's do a Kaizen, get the savings, get the benefits, and that's it, let's go. It's more about, hey, you're learning how to actually improve by yourself. We're like teaching you how to improve. So it's not just that final return on investment. For me, it's more the cultural part.
Well, and that helps, I think, with adoption, right? I mean, the point is you're trying to help people improve what they do, improve their skill set. So, people now they can kind of see what's in it from them, not just that, you're trying to improve the bottom line.
Exactly, yeah.
So in your current role, you're standardizing tender processes, requests for proposal for us folks in the United States in a very tender process driven environment. So what does that look like when you look at that from a business transformation perspective? Where do you see the biggest flow and capacity challenges in that process?
Well, we started, what is it already, 3 years ago by country tender processes. Then we decided to do a global process. We see like similar, here in Europe is more tender based, the business we're working on. And we saw like there's gaps in communication, gaps in documentation. We have the language barriers. We have the documentation in one language that we need to translate in the other one. So how it works in the tender processes, especially in healthcare, centrals of sourcing central from hospitals, they will require something. Then there's you as a company, you identify there's a tender in the market that you can participate. So starting from that process, like how do I identify the right market that I can participate in? So then how can I trigger that process to my commercial teams? Are we interested? Okay, I'm interested. What is the next steps? How do we have those talking about metrics? How do we measure the effectiveness of my process? Because you're limited in time. Some countries will say like tender, it's out, you have 3 weeks to respond. Then you start responding. So you start like working backwards. When we're trying to do business improvement on that process, it's not like, okay, let's participate more. No, it's like now we have 3 weeks. Do we respond in 3 weeks or we try to respond faster? So in case there's any contingency or emergency, we have time to respond. So we start like really breaking into pieces those processes, how to put a commercial team with a marketing team, with an installation team, with a pricing team all together to work at the same rhythm. That was the actual challenge because everyone has different agendas. This is like really reactive. So how to become proactive? We have the right documents, we have the right databases, we have the right workflows, the tracking systems, the metrics, the routines, the roles and responsibilities. That's what we define in a full process for the tender, for the pricing, for updating the system. And that's how we've been working on specifically on tenders.
So have you, what sort of results have you, it sounds like you started on that. I don't know if that one in particular was 3 years ago, but you've been working that different approach for a while. What sort of results have you seen out of that?
So we started first measuring, and we always explain to people, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So let's say we say, like, how many tenders did you participate last year? I mean, we can go back and search emails and stuff like that. So we put together the systems to be able to measure. So first, now we can track how many, how much, how often do we win, how often we do lose, and if we lose, why, and if we win, why, and that we can replicate in other tenders. That's been the success. Like people are more able to go back to the business and say like, hey, look, last time this happened. Now we have the information to actually respond faster. And even for product development, that's easier because now you know like, hey, we were lacking technicalities, we were lacking specifications. Now we can go back to the business unit and say like, hey, we need to develop more because this market is asking for it.
So have you found that now you're able to, I'm thinking from an operations science perspective in terms of just throughput. So are you able to respond to more tenders now, now that you've got the process pretty well defined?
We're able to respond smarter. And the intention that we told people, we don't want to respond just to more tenders just to respond because some like you don't even interested, but we were able to reduce the variability, understand that variability of the tenders. They said like, okay, there's a lot of different questions, there's a lot of political now with all sustainability, stuff like that. So we're able to respond smarter to the tenders, the ones that brings more value. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I always like to say some of the best deals are the ones you never make, and weeding out those tenders that you don't need to spend effort on is a huge productivity improver. Well, that's fascinating. So, do you guys look at, so for instance, when you were defining these processes, you have commercial teams. Are you looking at those guys in terms of capacity resources? Do you know how many commercial teams you need to respond to a certain level of tenders? I've got my operations science hat on when I'm thinking about that, because those are just resources, right? People are resources, and there's so much time that they can spend in a day on working on tenders.
Yes, of course. In our last larger event, that was one of the things. Like, is it capacity and resources? Because countries vary on size, and the teams are varying. Like, really, the resources. Like, it's a U.S. company, so of course there's a lot of resource in the U.S. In Europe, Asia Pacific, Latin America, we might have less. But that was one of the main things for specifically for these initiatives. Is like, do we have the resources? If we want to increase our market, it's like we will participate more, but we need more resources to be able to respond. Otherwise, you're just like putting everything in the same person, and then there's a huge bottleneck. And they're like, okay, what do I do? What is the priority? Well, everything is a priority. So we say, okay, we need to resource, we need to resource better and smarter, and train the people. So it was everything around that resource management that is really important.
Sure. I mean, that's the key. If you don't have capacity right, not much else works right. So were you able, it sounds like though now, if you set up the process, you're able to measure stuff, enables you to do a better job of making the case for additional resources to people, because at least now you have some data to show what you need.
Yeah, we did before the event, we did almost like 6 to 8 months of pre-work, data gathering from every country in the world that we participate, because they were saying, we struggle. Okay, in what do you struggle? How much? How many did you participate? Oh, let me know, let me see. And then it's like, how much money you spend? How much money you didn't win? How many markets you didn't win because of you didn't even respond? So that's what we were saying. What is worse, losing because you didn't have the product or the responses, or losing because you didn't even participate? And why you didn't even participate? Because we couldn't, we didn't have the time to participate, to actually submit something. So that built the case to say like, okay, we need resources. It's more like the potential that you can.
Yeah, I mean, that just that echoes what we say all the time at the Operations Science Institute. You know, it wouldn't be very good science if it didn't apply everywhere, and you have the same issues with, call them sort of knowledge-based or virtual processes as you do with people making, you know, sterilization kits in the factory. I mean, it's still resources, it's capacity, it's time involved, and sounds like you've done a very good job of making that visible to people so that you can make your case and improve the process. So that, kudos to you. Good work.
Not that it was a really team effort with the actual business for them to see. It was like, I did a couple events in different countries, but on the global is like for actually showing the business, like, yes, we need the resources.
Yeah, and the other thing is, executives tend to, have very short attention spans, and so you have to be able to provide the data, which will get their attention, rather than just trying to, make it a PowerPoint conceptual thing. So yeah, definitely. Well, in our initial conversations prepping for the call, you said you're also working on a new factory where the goal is to double capacity. Now back to the factory approach. How do you approach that problem from a systems perspective, looking at layout, automation, product mix, and that balance of capacity, inventory, and lead time, which is the operations science portfolio?
Yeah, so going back to operations, when I switched my hats from the business to operations and manufacturing, working with the local sites. So when I was saying like going there and observe, so that's our first thing. You get to a new site, you don't working with the people is like, okay, this is your current organization. What can we do a little bit more tomorrow? If we modify this flow, it will bring us an extra minute, an extra second, an extra hour, an extra week. And then from there, trying to understand automation. I always tell people like a new software or a new robot or a new production line, it won't bring you more if you don't have the process. And if you don't understand your own process, if you don't measure what you do today, step by step, cutting the metal, how long it takes? 1 hour, 45 minutes. Is 1 hour or 45 minutes? Well, it's 45 minutes. Okay, because those 15 extra minutes can be for exchange the cutting blades or moving the trays or moving the carts. So it's like really understanding, because if we want to pass from one machine a week to two machines a week or 3 to 5, we really need to make sure we gain and understand every little thing. So how we do it, standards, like putting the standards, work instructions, training, safety, because anything that it's like unsafe, you lose one operator, then you lose your production in the week. So
Has to be number one concern. Yeah, definitely. Somewhere in between those two is sort of your distribution network. You mentioned distribution centers that supply components to factories and then finished goods to customers. How do you see that, or do you see that as being any different, or what are the particular characteristics of and main sources of variability in the network, and how do you apply your approach in the distribution network?
So there's really smart people on the background on the actual distribution and the sourcing. There's a lot of models being utilized right now. The PFEP, the plan for every part. So after COVID, there was, okay, we're able to stock like inventory because there was a lot of issues with transportation, with components coming from Asia. Okay, it was okay for the organization to have like stock. After 2 years, it was okay. Now we need to start like, we don't need that much stock. It's money that is like just sleeping. We're in a business that, especially for service, for example, hospitals, a machine will go down. They will call. They need the machine. They need the spare part. So we need to combine the spare part from the distribution center, from the factories that we build the spare parts, or the suppliers, in a 24-hour period. And that's a really big challenge. Sometimes we have parts that come from the US. We need to expedite overnight. It needs to go to distribution center. It goes to the technician and goes to the hospital. So it's like having those systems in place, having those processes, like a planning system where you don't have to just like be reactive, but at least know that you have somehow some stock, the minimum stock in your trunk stock or in your factories. So we work with those teams, we work with those distribution centers, we work with the factories, we work with the technicians. Actually, we're coming up in January with a scheduling event, and that part of like distribution. How is the link between a hospital need and a distribution center? Is like having those communication channels.
So when just a clarification there, when you talk about a technician, is that somebody assisting at the hospital? Is that somebody working in a distribution center? Just provide a little bit more detail on that.
We have a full service. You sell the machine, you install the machine, and you service the hospital. So the hospital will have maintenance teams, but they won't be expert in all the machines. So you have internal technicians in country that will go and actually fix the machine, know the spare part, contact the service, get the part from the distribution center.
Okay, so you've worked with multiple ERP and planning systems. What, from your perspective, makes a difference between a system that helps with good operational decisions and one that just adds complexity?
I've had these discussions, and as I mentioned before, like it's not the software that will give you the solutions. It's like, do you have good data, or do you prefer good insights, right? What is the actual data telling me? Because you put bad data in, you get bad data out. So it's how these ERPs, we use Oracle. I used to use SAP. I used to use Microsoft Dynamics. But it's not the system that will solve your problems. It's how you actually fit the systems, because then people start going like, I don't understand the system. It's too complicated. I cannot get the data. I start using Excel because at least it's something I can control. So that's why when there's new implementation, we should like, let's adapt the system to your process, not the process to your system, because then every country will need to do different systems, right?
Oh my gosh, that brings back so many memories. Dr. Spearman, before he retired and we'd do training, he would say that, and this is a joke about SAP, but he'd say SAP's motto is, "You will change your processes to fit our systems, and you will like it."
Yeah, exactly.
That's just picking on SAP, which is not fair because it's exactly what you say. It's people don't understand how the systems work, and so they end up just defaulting to Excel, which is actually one of the things we spend a lot of time. That's part of the mission of the Operations Science Institute is if you understand the underlying science of what's going on with your system, then you can use the system as actually a control system, not as a bookkeeping, a glorified bookkeeping system that you then put the results into Excel and then play with yourself. But that's such a widespread problem. And there was one other thought I had about that. When we look at systems and we try and help people understand the science behind it, the idea is to just talk about basic stuff. I mean, when you're trying to optimize inventory, what do you need to know? You really only need to know two things: when you need to order and how much you need to order. And that should be determined based on the variability that you see. And so helping people understand that at a basic level sort of inoculates them to getting lost in the confusion of what's in the system. The other thing, and we've got this in actually chapter 14 of the new book that's coming out shortly. I used to kind of beat up software vendors. So I'd say, they just make all this stuff that people want and they don't, really train them on the underlying concepts. And so to your point, people get the system and they don't use it. They just use Excel spreadsheets. And Uwe Goring, who's on our advisory committee and's worked with SAP for 25 years, he's like, look, SAP is in business to make money, which is to sell software. And so if customers ask for stuff, they're going to build the stuff that the customers ask for. And is that really the software vendor's fault? No, it's not. If you think about it, it's the customer's problem because the customer is asking for stuff that maybe they don't need because they don't understand the underlying behavior of their systems. But I could talk about that for days.
Just as in our company, there was at some point that our boss, she said like, okay, to the applications guy, said like, get me statistics on how much the user actually use their system, because they would develop reports or like small applications and systems. And I think there was like a 17% of a usage of application, and the actual amount of work and salary paid to these consultants or these developers, it was like super high. Like, yeah, we have like hundreds of applications that someone is like, yeah, I need this application for this specific need. They would use it 2 times and like, okay, that's it.
Yeah, it's not. I tend to agree with Uva. It's not the software vendor's problem. It's the customers. And again, that just comes back to the science. It's like, look, guys, if you understand the science, you can use your system no matter what the system. That's what I tell people all the time. You can get better performance with the system you have now if you understand the science and the behavior of operations and know how to optimize it. To coming back around to where you.
Yeah. To actually not tell them I won't do it for you, which is like, okay, we'll just put a funnel with a lot of questions. Do you really understand what you need? And at some point, like the intake form would like tell people like, you're asking questions, you're asking for reports, you're asking for applications that you don't even know. And people stop like asking for, because they say like, okay, now I need to answer a lot of questions and I don't have the answers. And they stop.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to close this one out and come back around to where you started, it's really not about the systems. It's about the people's understanding of, how operations work. So that's we could talk about that for days, but that is yeah, it's not really the systems. And people do spend a lot of money and don't get good results because they just don't understand the underlying behavior very well. Or you have a lot of different opinions. You don't have a common understanding of the science. It'd be like people, 10 people standing on the top of a 5-story building, right? And maybe 3 of them understood how gravity worked and the other 7 didn't. And so when you said, okay, let's get down from the top of this building as quickly as possible. Well, some of them not understanding gravity are just going to step off the side of the building and they're not really going to like the result they get. And it's the same thing. It's you need to have a common understanding and you need to be aligned with the behavior of your systems. So you put a lot of emphasis on foundation training, lean champions, and you mentioned Kaizen. How do you build that capability? Is there a process your trainers go through? Do you have a dedicated group for that? How does that work?
But we do also we do facilitate Kaizen event, we do facilitate the strategy, but we also train the people. So that's part of our, let's say like the 20% of the activity to actually go and train. We go to, let's say Disney.
Training people how to do Kaizens or train instructors to conduct Kaizens?
We have models. Let's say lean practitioner, lean champions is like, you have an idea, you want to develop something, an initiative in your small work area, you become a lean practitioner or lean champions. You have some tools to actually do 5S or do a process mapping on your own with your teams. Then we have this model of Kaizen facilitators. Like, I'll teach you how to facilitate. I won't teach you what is 5S. I won't teach you what is process mapping. You should know already that because you went through the training. I will teach you how to teach it, how to actually organize a Kaizen event, how to describe and help the team lead that wants that initiative. What is the problem statement? What are the deliverables they're looking for, right? How to actually use the room, how to use the room, how to use the flip chart, how to actually engage people, and you're not doing everything. So we teach on that. So you ask, how do we actually measure that? I explain people, you're measuring on performance, maybe. We're measuring the cultural maturity. We have surveys, we call it maturity assessment. Is like, do you have this and this and this and this criteria? Yes, no, there's like a scoring, and we say, okay, you're in a level 2 or 3 or on maturity of lean. And then from there we have, okay, the action plan is, okay, this year you need to start having SQDC boards, you need to implement 5S, you need to create your critical process, standard work, process mapping, and then you will go to the next level. So we actually have our own internal measurement system for people to understand where they are. So we just don't just come and say like, you're not good enough on lean, you need this. It's like, we actually measure it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. Because you raise a really good point, and anybody who's done this sort of thing has seen that before. We'll we'll train trainers. So we'll train facilitators. And we've gone into companies, they start out and say, oh, we've got 20 people who want to be facilitators. And so we go through the operation science training. Everybody's like, oh, yeah, it's cool. Get those concepts. And we're like, okay, now you need to demonstrate for me that you can present the material, do all the things that you mentioned. You're comfortable with the room, you know how to use a flip chart, that sort of thing. And you just get a pretty substantial dropout of people because they like, yeah, I'm just not comfortable doing that. It's not the material. It's the actually just getting up in front of a room and leading people. So that is a key a skill that you do have to develop. And some people are like, oh, I'm not sure. And then they stick with it. And then you provide the training and then they make their way through. But you're absolutely right. You can't just say, oh, you're an expert in lean, so now go teach lean. Those are two different things.
Yeah, and that's how it worked before. It was people just, I want to be part, but then it was like a referral process. It's like there's a manager. He said like, this is a good one. They have to go through an 18 months. So they do the training and they has 18 months to deliver Kaizen events. First with one of us, second like as co-facilitator, second, third like by themselves, and then like being validated. And there were people like, no, it's not my thing. I don't like to challenge people. I don't like to challenge the manager. So it's like, yeah, okay, but that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, that's true. You get a lot of people who self-select out initially thinking that, oh, it's something I want to do. And then they don't want to do that kind of stuff. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you got some people who you just can't get to shut up. It's like, okay, hold on. You don't have all the answers. I love your enthusiasm. So it's a balance. It definitely is. It's a great way. It's so enjoyable though. It's a great way working with people and seeing them develop into good facilitators. So yeah.
But it helps having those programs because we're 70, let's say 60 team members on the lean team for a 20,000 people company. So we need those supports. We need those supports to actually be independent, autonomous, and we can just support on the side. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to have the internal. You don't want to have to hire a consultant every time you want to deliver a program. That's just not particularly sustainable. Definitely. Well, here's another part of that, engaging people in their own language. And, how does that, well, that really helps build trust, whether you're on the shop floor or you're in the distribution network or you're in the back office or support operations. What have you learned about communication and cultural adaptation? Because particularly in Europe, you work, as you mentioned, across a lot of different cultures and languages. What have you learned that makes improvement stick?
So as you mentioned, languages, like I'm lucky to being able to live in different countries. So I speak Spanish, French, and English, so I can engage with people in the Iberian business part, in the French part. The rest of the business normally it's English everywhere, but you go to places like they won't speak English, so you need to adapt. So you need to understand culturally, like how to run a meeting with the French team, how to run a meeting with the Spanish. Like as an example, like as a joke, don't ever plan meetings in Spain on Friday after 3 p.m.
Yeah.
It's siesta, no siesta, or tapas time, whatever culturally, like, and they're clear about it and they know it, and the culture runs like that. France would be, it's France, you need to run a meeting to be able to take a decision for another meeting. It's more like coaches, right?
I'm sorry, it's more like what?
It's more like you don't just go and take decisions. You need to really consensus. Well, I read something really interesting, like about the different models and strategies of cultural in the US and Europe. So US is fast because you have one big country, like the same language, right? You can take decisions, and that's how like let's go try, and if it doesn't work, we try. Europe is more like consensus. Everything has to be like on a consensus. Then you have the market size. The US, you take one decision, it can impact 300 million people. Europe, smaller market, is more complex. You have different languages, different cultures. So it's that two concepts. And then you have the communication. You were talking about communication. US, it can be direct, one language. It's like, let's do a big event, let's do communication like big party. Here it has to be really personal. You need to be really like careful. How do you mention the things? How do you abort? Is it a town hall? Is it like you don't send an email like of communication? It has to be really So that's how I've seen it, that I've lived in the US, I've lived in France, in Spain, and how to really be more personal in communication. How helped for me, it was being able to communicate with the floor shop in their language, literally like language, and also their like operational language. That has helped me a lot to actually bring back to the business and that understanding from the factory and translate it into a different way of communication with the business people. So that helped a lot.
Yeah, that is so important. Americans are really bad about just assuming, and of course, not all Americans, but I've seen this before where they just assume everybody's going to work like them. When they walk into a meeting, and then you can just see the room, people just like closing off because it's just a different way to work. And I'll give you another example: cultural differences. I lived and worked in Japan for 2.5 years, and you don't make any decisions in a meeting, right? It's all everybody has to think about it, talk about it. They have to make sure that nobody's being offended and that they're managing the political aspect of it. And actually they have a term for it. I think it's called nemawashi, but that's completely different too. And it took a while to understand that when somebody would just, and they have a term, it's called muzakashi, which means it's difficult. They never say no. They just say, oh, it's difficult. And you're like, okay, I think that means no, but I'm not really sure. So it's a great experience living and working in different cultures because you just get so much broader perspective. All right, one more question on the business front. You were recently at the European Business Transformation Summit, and they were talking about the latest, hottest thing, AI and Industry 4.0 and 5.0. So, what's your opinion of the role of AI and where that's going? What do you see?
I mean, there's as we saw it there, and there was a speaker, really interesting guy. He was data scientist from Ukraine. He said like he was building rockets, and then he moved to the US 20 years ago, and he gave a conference on demystifying the AI. It's like people need to understand AI. It's a fancy way to say like machine learning that we had 50 years ago. That was Encyclopedia Britannica. He said, you consult something. That's on the ChatGPT Copilot that we know today, AI as we know today. Then we need to understand that it won't solve your issues if you don't know how to use. It's like the softwares. It's like the new machines. You don't know how to use it. You don't know how actually be responsible of what are you using, because there's a lot of, he said like AI will be ready to lie to you
Oh, yes, definitely.
and you will believe it.
Yeah, well, that's right. If you don't know, you can be in big trouble. That's right.
And there's a lot of people that have no, he said, we need to be critical thinkers. Hey, I asked a question like, let's verify. So for me, AI, I love it. I love new technologies, but it won't solve our issues. Talking about Industry 4.0 to 5.0, they were talking about, well, now we can go to 5.0. And I was like, okay, what is 5.0? It's the people. I'm like, okay, the people is being the most important thing from, yeah, but now you have all the digital and all the information. Now people need to take decisions. I'm like, so you're calling Jidoka automation? Well, no, it's not the same. I was like, so if my factors are not on 4.0, I cannot go to 5.0. Well, it should be. I said, there was a guy on a master's on 4.0. I'm like, yeah, but I don't agree. You're just like, and the guy really interesting. He said like, this is old wine, new label.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of our factories will never go totally digital. It's assembly, a lot of banging and welding, and it's like, yes, there's things that we can make it digital or automation, but for me, still the people is the most important because they need to make decisions. They need to actually react on many of the things. You need to communicate. For us, it's a lot of communication. So I love AI. I'm willing to see what's coming next, but for the moment, I'm not, I would say I'm not afraid that, okay, we're behind.
Well, yeah, I always like to say I love AI. I use AI. I don't trust AI at all. It's great for a lot of things, but and it plays actually. People are like, oh, you don't need operation science now. You got AI. I'm like, look, let me tell you, I actually put a question that was the wrong answer. I said, explain to me how increasing utilization decreases cycle time, which is exactly the opposite of what it does. And I put it into two different AIs. One of them explained to me how that works, which was completely wrong. And then the other one correctly said, oh, no, that's not the right relationship. So, to your point, you need to know your stuff and then you can use AI appropriately. It's not that it's not helpful, but boy, yeah, it's not going to replace good fundamentals.
Yeah, there was a good example that they showed on the something that it was a procedural, something a process in legal process in the US that they use AI to say like this will happen. So it's like that movie from 2001 from Tom Cruise that what was it, Minority Report.
Yeah, right.
It's like it will detect and it will start like and this guy saying like that's the new AI that is still is like fiction. We're still on fiction that is like and next to us in that Amsterdam transformation summit in the next building there was an AI summit for this new the 5.0 AI that it's like they say like they think they still AI will become a Terminator and will overtake the world. It's like it's not gonna happen.
That's not going to happen. Although, actually, and I think I've said this on a couple of podcasts. One of the things that you do see is it's like not your job's not going to be replaced by AI. Your job might be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI. So because you can be a lot more efficient, a lot more effective with it. So that's something to consider. So great. So all right, let's talk about Oscar Sroor, the man. Where did you grow up, and what were the or who or what were the early influences that led you to where you are today?
So I was born and raised in Mexico. I was born in Mexico City, grew up in the north of Mexico in Chihuahua, in a town called Delicias. I did engineering school in another city in Monterrey. Then I did my first exchange program in France in 2006. Well, after high school, I went to the US. That's where I did an English program. Then I started university. 3 years later, I came to France for I did an exchange program in Monaco in business administration. And first of all, those were the first thing like, okay, traveling. I like traveling. Cultures. I like cultures. I moved back to Mexico. Then I started working in the US for the chocolate company. I was in a graduate training program, so that opened a lot of doors because you get to see. I was in operations, so I was able to work in different areas. So that's where I started continuous improvement. In one of the projects, they said like assignments. They said like, look, we're starting the continuous improvement organization in this company. You will join the team. Just start learning about more about the operation.
Oh, that was a great opportunity. Yeah.
And after my graduate training program, I stayed in the continuous improvement team. So they offered me a full position as part of the continuous improvement team in Americas, and then I moved to Europe. That's how I started continuous improvement.
Yeah, but the early influences. So your parents, was your father or mother an engineer? You have brothers and sisters who've done the same thing. How's that work?
No, my dad has been a business owner for a long time, but they always support us on this. You want to go, but you're gonna be engineer. My mom, I remember because I was not really good at maths in junior high. And then she was like, are you sure you want to be an engineer? I said, yeah. Okay. And then in high school, it was like, oh, okay. But then in university, it was perfect fine. I think it was just the environment, like I was playing football, I had friends, but I was always good at school. I had no problems. But I had that support, that influence, like go ahead, learn English, travel. We always travel all the country. Like my parents, both of them, they're being really supportive in both my brother and me. My brother is a mechanic. He started in mechatronics. He ended up as an electronic and electrical engineer, and he ended up being a consultant on digital marketing. He has his own business in digital marketing. So nothing to do with engineering, but I think he had the foundations. Me as well, on the business part, I always saw my dad on business. So for me, it was like, okay, but you need to like work your way up. And that's something that helped me, like having that support. That was my, they never said like, no, you should do this. It's like, go on it.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a strong support network. All right. So, last question. What do you like to do outside of work to relax and unwind?
So I have three daughters. That's my
How old are they?
they're 11 months, 4 years old, and 7 years old. So they're in that age where you need a lot of energy after work because they're ready to play. They want to tell you their day. Uh, I'm enjoying right now with the oldest one doing homework. My wife, she's French, so my daughters were born in France, so they're bilingual now, the oldest one. So that's also my other challenge. And I say challenge is like I want them to be bilingual. I want them to learn that the importance of cultures and speaking other languages and how they that will open the world. I like sports. I ride bike, road bike when I have time. We like to travel as a family a lot, so that's something really important for us.
That's awesome. Well, I tell you, that age, it goes by really quick. So as crazy as it can be sometimes, just enjoy it because it really doesn't last that long. That's wonderful. Definitely. Well, listen, thanks so much for being on the podcast. It's been a great conversation. I'm sure there's tremendous insights that the audience will take away. And enjoyed having you and look forward to talking again in the future.
Thank you. It was really nice sharing with you and actually learning about the operation science. When we started getting in touch, I started seeing your website, the book. So it's really interesting how to see a different way. It's not just like lean or transformation, it's the science behind and how you put it in those words and trying to explain it differently. Now, if I try to explain this to my friends or my wife, like, hey, I did something on operation science, they will be like, now what? But it's good to learn.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, that's the whole idea is that it applies everywhere. So, we're on that mission to help people understand. It doesn't replace lean. It doesn't replace any of that stuff. It just helps you understand it and be more effective with what you already have. All right. Well, listen, thanks, Oscar. Look forward to talking in the future. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
The Operation Science podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. Join the Operation Science Institute at opscience.org. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening and see you on the next episode. The views expressed by our guests are their own and do not represent their company's views unless specifically stated as such.